Hello everyone, it's Turin here, and today guys I'm here with another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this battle I'm going to be playing Bordeleaux, and I'm going to be facing off against the Wood Elves. So guys, you know what that means. Always a fun chance to use Uncle Albert with his bird and his anti-large bonus. So aside from Uncle Albert over there, I do have a front line of Battle Pilgrims. So these guys are pretty much a staple against the Wood Elves. They're a very cost-effective pick here, simply because they have very high weapon strength against lightly armored targets, and pretty much the entire Wood Elf front line is very lightly armored. So War Dancers only have 15 armor, and Eternal Guards I believe have 40, so they're going to be able to get their damage in with that 35 weapon strength and outstanding leadership. So with the Grail Reliquae mixed in, these guys on the side do have 93, but the ones in the center actually have over 100 leadership. So they're going to last a long time. It will definitely kind of stand up to the leadership of those Wood Elf units who do have very good leadership as well. So War Dancers actually have 83, and then I believe the Eternal Guards are upward in the 90s. Yeah, 93. So pretty equivocal in that respect. Aside from that, I do have three groups of Men-at-Arms and Polearms in the back for their anti-large and armor piercing. So sometimes, most Wood Elf players from a competitive meta perspective are just going to get Eternal Guards and kind of play that traditional Eternal Guard, missiles, Glade Lord, that kind of a build. But I have run into quite a few people on ladder who do get a lot of tree cannon. You can see here there's actually one group here and one on the far side. So having that anti-large is very helpful. You can kind of mix them in the front line, and it gives you some tools to take these guys down. Aside from that, I do have some Royal Pegasus Knights with their anti-large and their very heavy move speed. So you can see when they're buffed right now, their move speed is actually 116. That's one of the things, let's go ahead and pause here, that Uncle Albert here does. I believe he does have this ability. So the Spirit of the Tempest. So it gives 10% speed and a charge bonus to nearby units. So if you're flying around with some Pegasus Knights, these guys can just be absolute track stars, which is pretty cool. So the Grail Reliquae, I do have Lore of Life with the Damsel in the back line with Regrowth and Earthblood. On top of that, I do have some Battle Pilgrims over here in the forest who are supported by two groups of Knights of the Realm. So Knights of the Realm, I also think, are a very good pick against Wood Elves, because number one, they just absolutely destroy Wild Riders. In a straight up fight, these guys are just going to just pretty much can them. Like they may lose like 30% of their models, but they'll take those Wild Riders down to 0. So a very good counter pick in that respect. And with their anti-large bonus, they can actually get through to the tree can pretty effectively. So just a good unit. And worst case scenario, even if you have to like rear charge them into the back of Eternal Guards and War Dancers and things like that, they can usually generate their value for you. So that's pretty much it for my army. For my opponent, he has it looks like the battle's actually about to start here, but he has a mixture of War Dancers with Eternal Guards in the front line, two groups of Treekin on the flanks. In the back, he does have two groups of Azurai Spears, so I really like that he has these guys in auxiliary to help protect. Two Glade Guards with Starfire Shafts, armor piercing, very good against Pegasus Knights and Knights of the Realm and all that kind of good stuff, and he does have a Glady back there. So very wise not putting it up in the air, especially against Bordeleaux with Uncle Albert and his Goon Squad. So without further ado, let's get right into the action. It's going to get rolling pretty quick here, guys. So the Battle Pilgrims in the front line are just going to kind of collapse against these War Dancers and these Eternal Guards, which is going to be a pretty atrocious trade for the most part. Two very lightly armored, low defensive units, although I would say that the Battle Pilgrims might have slightly higher defense, but look at this. She's just going full on Legolas in here, just jumping in there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the HP from that initial shock. So you can see I took a little bit of a beating there. We both do have Lore of Life, so it's going to be a pretty even kind of long-term exchange there if I can get my Lore of Life in the pocket where I really need it. You can see over here on the far side, I do get some of my Knights of the Realm, and I engage on some of these Treekin, so they're going to do pretty well here. Unfortunately, they do charge past in some of those Azurai Spears, which is not where they want to be, but the Treekin took a lot of damage there. I mean, you can see that's a good 30% of their HP, and I do have these Royal Pegasus Knights up here taking a lot of missile fire, unfortunately. So over here on the far side, I do get my Knights of the Realm up and around, and this is like the best case scenario, getting these Men-at-Arms with Polearms on the Treekin. Though I'm taking a little bit of damage initially, over the course of a long battle, these Treekin are going to get taken out pretty hard. So over here on the far side, I do get Uncle Albert and the boys who essentially dive on top of these Wild Riders and on top of his Lord. So I got some pretty good burst damage. If we go ahead and zoom up here, where did his Lord go? No, against these Wild Riders, not his Lord, excuse me. So the Wild Riders just got absolutely dumpstered by those Royal Pegasus Knights. But unfortunately, there are some Azurai Spears coming in the back. And you can see my opponent is retaliating here in just a moment. I believe he does use the Prey of Anathrama to kind of lock me down. So the Azurai Spears come in. The Wild Riders did get destroyed like I kind of predicted here. But he does pull these other Azurai Spears, leaving these missiles on the far side just completely exposed. And then there's few things cooler than the wedge formation charge. I don't know if it's like optimal. I know it does slow them down. But whenever I play Bretonnia, I always try and use it just to see like if it can be that much more effective. But it's always worth it from a cinematic replay perspective. So they just literally charge through and just destroy these Glade Guard. You'll see the burst damage coming through in just a second. But yeah, they're going to take quite a beating there and just get rode through. So over here, unfortunately, Uncle Albert and these Royal Pegasus Knights for my opponent, unfortunate for him, are able to just dumpster these Wild Riders. But my opponent does retaliate with a very good Prey of Anathrama. So I actually tried pulling out both groups. I did not notice that I was prayed right here. So my Royal Pegasus Knights get the regrowth, and they still have 14 models, so they should be fine. But still, Uncle Albert here is taking a beating. And over here, I do have my Knights of the Realm that I was desperate. I was like, uh-oh, Albert's in trouble. So I just pulled in my Knights of the Realm, even knowing that it's against like units, the Azurai Spears and all these guys. I just had to get in there and help. So I even pulled and the Pegasus Knights and just all my troops trying to save him, but he does break, unfortunately. So that was a really rough initial engagement here. So in the pocket, you can see it's still a pretty pitched fight. Unfortunately, my opponent has collapsed my flanks over here. My Battle Pilgrims were kind of wiped out for the most part, but I still do have a pretty healthy contingent of Battle Pilgrims and Men-at-Arms with polearms here, and the Men-at-Arms do have very high melee defense with over 40 if I'm not mistaken. And I do have a Grail Reliquary here. I think it's here. Yeah, so it's here. So it's going to keep these guys fighting. I mean, these Battle Pilgrims have taken a beating. They've taken a good 60% of their HP, well, more like 80% now. But they're still, confident and just fighting. Doing a very good job. But in the back line, it's going pretty well for me. And you can see, I realized that I kind of compromised his missile line. Uncle Albert did get up and away. And my Men-at-Arms with polearms here were doing pretty good. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to slam these guys into the back. I have 38 models. And even though there are anti-large and spears here and things like that, he has a lot of regular war dancers. So I think this could kind of help rout off these troops and give my core of men here that are still fighting a fighting chance. So we're getting in there. We're doing pretty good. You can see our wizards are having a little bit of a cockfight here, which is pretty fun. So the damsel, well, I wouldn't call it a cockfight per se. That definitely does not make sense. But the Spellslinger with the Lure of Life is fighting against the damsel with the Lure of Life, and I wonder who would actually win if it just went tooth and nail. Looks like my damsel has 34 melee attack to 22, but oh yeah, Uncle Albert isn't going to let his lady be slighted. Definitely going to come in here and do some work. So he came back, and thankfully I was able to get a heal on him, so he's just beating down this wizard over here, just kind of riding her down. You can see, hasn't taken a lot of damage yet, but if Albert sits on her for another minute or two, she's going to go down pretty hard. So over here you can see the Knights of the Realm. We're able to kind of push in and do a ton of shock damage. Just look how beat up all of his troops are now. They're able to pull out. They did take about 13 models in damage, but still a very, very good trade for me. I do have my Royal Pegasus Knights back here, and my Men-at-Arms were able to break his Treekin. You can see they're routing off over here. So I do collapse them on the War Dancers and these troops in the back line, and I also was able to get some Battle Pilgrims up and around. And the Knights are continuing to just ride through, just doing a ton of work. So very, very great value. I really like the Knights of the Realm in this matchup. Definitely a lot of fun. I think 2 might have been a little excessive, but I've had good results with them so far. So I am able to break his caster here, but I do see some Eternal Guard coming up to help, so I do pull back, and Uncle Albert unfortunately does get netted up here, and all of his missiles for the most part are broken down. So we do see one group of Blade Guard over here, but these Wild Riders, or excuse me, these Knights of the Realm, again, very good against the Treekin. They're able to do very, very well with their anti-large bonus. But these missiles over here on the far side are definitely not long for this Earth. They're just going to get lanced down, just Lord of the Rings style. The Rohirrim coming in pretty deep here, just going to do some good work. Literally sending these guys back to the forest. That's where they're going to be going, so that's always a good time. So they get rode down there. Knights of the Realm still performing quite well. Over here on the far side, my opponent does have a pretty good little pocket back here. So these Azrai Spears, even though they're meant against anti-large, they do pretty well in sustained combat, because they do have right now with I think he used the Mist effect. So he gave them the extra melee defense, but still 34 melee attack and 52 melee defense are excellent stats. So you can see he's actually routing off a lot of my Battle Pilgrims. My Men-at-Arms back here are also, pretty close to breaking here. They're actually shaken. So where it's going pretty well for me, though, is in the front line. You can see the Grail Reliquary and these Battle Pilgrims are kind of just fighting to the bitter end. These War Dancers are also probably trading pretty well, having racks of 86 kills. These Eternal Guards only 18 kills, but still they're fighting against units that do have higher melee defense. So Albert, though, unfortunately for my opponent, was able to heal, and he did rout off that Spellslinger. And I pretty much dominated the Cav game. His Wild Riders got put down pretty hard, so you can see these guys are going to charge in here and just slam into the back of these War Dancers. So this was a pretty even trade until that Cav charge. So you can see I just pull in, taking advantage of that charge bonus and the charge speed, and I'm just going to be pulling in and out. That's what she said. And it's going pretty well here. We're just getting all these cycle charges and all these units, and Albert is able to come in and just do massive shock damage to that Glade Lord, who is considered a large target. So it does shatter actually, which is brutal for my opponent. So that's really going to kind of hurt his chances of coming back at this point. But still, guys, there's plenty of time left in the battle, and it was pretty close, but I guess you can see the balance of power is starting to shift right now. So Albert doing pretty good. He's very fast. I mean, 110 move speed, and I wish I could have shown you guys the Trident, the Wrath of Manon that I did bring. I actually got a pretty nice one here a minute ago, but I'll definitely try and do more plays with Uncle Albert and get some of that cinematic action for you guys. So he gets in there, does some pretty good shock damage to the opponent's Lord, but my Knights of the Realm unfortunately do get caught up. Oh, there it was right there, so I didn't actually miss it. Okay, guys, so you can see it actually does hit their leadership, taking them down to about 28. Granted, their leadership was good enough. I think the Wrath of Manon might be good against factions like Beastmen and Greenskins who are, somewhat lightly armored and low leadership. I think you could really have a niche in that if if at all, you're going to use Uncle Albert. I still think that Lewin and the Fey Enchantress are absolutely way more competitive. So my opponent does have a pretty healthy little goon squad here, and the Wood Elves do have very, very good leadership. They're not going to go quietly into this good night. You can see over here on the far side, I do have some Men-at-Arms with polearms, and the Grail Reliquary still fighting. 25 Battle Pilgrims here who are steady, despite being exhausted and just having barely any models left in their regiment. But unfortunately for my opponent, I do have some Pegasus Knights, and you can see Albert is kind of just cleaning up the scraps on the far side, and that's going to be pretty much all she wrote for my opponent. So let's go ahead and take a look around, and it looks like that is it. So very well played. It was a super fun battle. It's always cool to use these niche lords. You guys for anyone that was on the last stream, I got a chance to use Balthazar Gelt and, you know, try and make him work as best I could. And on top of that, we got to use Helming Gorst, and Uncle Albert here is always a pretty good time. And the reason I call him Uncle Albert is just simply because I don't want to like mangle the name, just because I'm hopeless with French. I believe the term would be nomenclature, just their naming system. It's just it's hopeless for me, guys. So bear with me on that. But regardless, very, very good results here from the Battle Pilgrims. Knights of the Realm were true MVPs. They shut down his Wild Rider so hard. And then they got to the back line. He did have 2 Azrai Spears, but the 2 Azrai Spears in the back weren't really enough to stop 2 Knights of the Realm, Pegasus Knights, and Albert. That was a lot to deal with. So when he came to deal with Albert, the Knights of the Realm came in on the flanks. It was just kind of an overwhelming number type situation. So I would have liked to see like maybe a few less War Dancers for my opponent, maybe cut 2 groups of those, get some Eternal Guards for the front line, and then that would open up more Eternal Guards for the back line, which a single group of Eternal Guards can easily just shut down a group of Knights of the Realm. So that could have been pretty strong for my opponent. So regardless, well played to him, Thrill House. Look forward to seeing you again on Ladder. Hope you guys enjoyed that Bordeleaux game. Definitely will try to get some more in there. And guys, have an excellent night and take care.